Alright guys, so this is the problem that you're given, and they're saying that, the x-intercepts are at -4, 0, 6, 0, and the y-intercept is at 0, 240. In the first part of the problem, they want you to write down f of x in this format. Let me just highlight that real quick. Alright, so this is the format that they want you to write the function in. Now you can see that that's the same as the intercept form or the factored form. So how do you write that? Well, the thing is, the fact that they already gave you the x-intercepts, the only thing that you have to do is just plug in those values and simplify that. So we're going to write the original function out that they gave you, x minus p, parentheses, x minus q. And at this point, just go back and plug in the x-intercepts that they gave you. The first x-intercept that they gave you was obviously a -4, and that's also given as an ordered pair. Once you plug that in, you're going to see that in the next step, it's going to be simplified down to a +4. And the second x-intercept that they gave you is a 6. Once you simplify this out, that's going to give you a -10. Oh, a negative times a negative, that's going to give you a positive. And this is going to get changed into a 4, and that's going to be a -6. And there's the answer for the first part of the problem. So f of x is equal to -10, parentheses, x plus 4, parentheses, and x minus 6. For the second part of the problem, what do they want you to do in this case? Find another expression for f of x in the form f of x is equal to -10, parentheses, x minus h to the second plus k. Now all they're saying is rewrite that same equation in vertex form. Now this is going to be a little bit different, and the way that we're going to do that is by completing the square on this, just like I've done that in the class. Now right now, when you have to complete the square, what you want to do is leave the coefficient in the front and write this thing so that this thing's going to be FOILed out. So when you multiply the x and the x, that's going to give you an x to the second. The x and the -6, that's going to give you a -6x. And the 4 and the x, that's going to give you a +4x. Multiply with the last thing, and that's going to give you a -24. Now at this point, I can combine a few terms in this. So x to the second, I can combine the -6x with the +4x, and that's going to give me a -2x minus the 24. Now, to complete the square, this is what we're going to do. The coefficient in front of the x to the second term has to be a 1. And since the -10 is already factored out, the coefficient over here is a 1. So we can continue with this problem. And this is how you complete the square. What we're going to do is we're going to write the first two terms, x to the second minus 2x. And we're going to take that -24 and we're actually going to put that, we're going to write that -24 on the outside. And the reason is because when you have to complete the square, you want to make sure that you have the term that you're looking at, the last term that you're looking at, that needs to be written using this formula. B squared minus, no, let me just erase that real quick. This is the equation that you use to complete the square, b over 2 squared. Okay. And the thing is, you want to make sure that you add that term over on this side, but just before you write that -24 on the outside, you got to make sure that you actually multiply this thing out. Because if you were to write that thing by itself, you know that there's a -10, so you can't just put a -24 on the outside. You know that the -10 and the -24 would actually give you a +240. It's like saying if I were to FOIL each one of those things backwards, isn't it true that the -10 and the -24 is going to give me a +240? So that's the reason why you want to make sure that when you write this thing on the outside, it's not just a -24, it's the multiplication of whatever that number is in the front. Alright, once you have this, now you can actually proceed with completing the square on this. Now, a lot of the times students have this question, they ask, well, what's the b that we're going to be looking at and stuff? And the answer is the b in this case has to be that -2, but it doesn't really matter. Even if you plugged it into 2, once you square that, it's going to end up giving you a positive answer. So once you put that in, this is going to give me a -2 over 2 to the second power, and obviously that's going to be a -1 squared. Simplify this down, that's going to give you a +1. Now, once I write this thing out, if I'm changing the equation, I need to make sure that I'm also modifying the rest of the equation so I can always go back to the original equation. Would it be true that since I added a 1, and if I were to FOIL this, that would give me a -10? That's going to give me a -10, right? But that's something that I added in the problem. That wasn't something that was originally in the problem. So how would I cancel out the -10 that I've just added there? How would I cancel that thing out? Well, what cancels out a -10? A +10. So what we're going to do is we're going to write out a +10 on the outside of the equation. And believe it or not, once you can do that, we're almost done with this problem, and this is what's going to happen. You write the negative 10, and at this point, you can factor out this part. And just like how I showed you guys in the class, this is how we're going to factor this thing out. Always look at the first thing that they gave you, which is going to be the variable x that we're looking at. The next thing would be the sign after that. So what's the sign that we're looking at? It's the negative sign. Okay, so once you write that negative, the last thing that you have to write down is the square root of the number that you just added there. So if you're looking at a 1 and you take the square root of that, that's only going to give you back a 1. Write this out, close that parentheses, and put a square root on top of that. And the only thing that you have to do with the numbers that are on the outside is that you just have to combine them. And that's an easy combination. You know, that's 240 plus 10. That's going to give you a positive 250. And there you go, guys. That's how you write the equation in the vertex form. And that's exactly what they want in that part of the problem. Alright, guys, just one last thing. You know, part C, what do they want you to do in there? Okay, so rewrite that equation in standard form. Now, the easiest way you can do that is by realizing the fact that if you go back to the first step in that part B, you can just FOIL this whole thing out. Okay, so if you were actually look at the second step, since we've already combined the negative 6x and the 4x, if you FOIL this out, you know, so let's write, I'm going to take this part of the problem and I'm going to write this out. So f of x is equal to negative 10, parentheses, x to the second, minus 2x minus 24. If I FOIL this thing out, what's that going to give me? Negative 10x to the second. Right? FOIL just means that you're distributing the stuff. Negative 10 times a negative 2x is going to give me a positive 20x. And then, of course, the last thing is a negative 10 times a negative 24, and that's going to give me a positive 240. Now, look, you got this equation. If you want to rearrange that to match it up with what they have, you don't even need to. But the things you want to do that, you can see that that's the same equation. That's how you do that. So what was the actual point of doing this problem? Well, they gave you the function, they gave you the x-intercepts, and they gave you the y-intercept. And the only thing that they wanted you to know was, they wanted to see was, you know, if you know how to go back and forth from one form of the equation to the other form. And if you can show them that, then obviously you can get all the credit on this. Alright, guys, that's the end of this problem. We're going to continue with a couple more. You know, and if obviously if you have any questions and stuff, you want to make sure that you ask those in the class.